and whoever he was sent to investigate, so he comes back and says that she is the wife of Uriah. Now, you wouldn't know who Uriah is, but later on in Shmuel base, it's clear that Uriah is one of David's generals, quite high-ranking general. So David knows Uriah. The story looks as if he knows who his wife is as well, because the people who come back with a message says, isn't she Bathsheba, Uriah's wife? Now, if I would say that to you, it means I'm expecting you to, well, you couldn't see from the distance who it was, but so when you know, right? But that's another question, like how does David know Uriah's wife? Okay, again, you could answer it, but it's just pointing it out. Okay, then he finds out who she is. He sends messengers to bring her to him, and she comes. Right, it looks from the story that he didn't force her to come. It says, and she came. Sounds like she came voluntarily. And then he slept with her. That means he had sexual relations with her, and then sent her home, right? Well, and she went home. And sent her home, she went home, right?
David HaMelech had sex with Bathsheba while Uriah was fighting?
Correct, absolutely, that's what it says in the story.
Right?
I'm also shocked.
Directly to, against the Torah, right? Because you can't...
Correct, absolutely, she was a married woman, right? This is a shocking story, right? You get more shocked as we go along, right? Okay? And then she gives a message that she's pregnant. Now, another point that we pointed out on the way was, it mentions in the story that she had become purified from her impurification. She wasn't a nida, right? Which, as we pointed out, seems to be a very unimportant fact, because, and if she was, he wouldn't have done it. Like, he didn't care if she was a married woman, but he did care that she was a nida.
A nida is when she's menstruating.
Menstruating, right? So that's like, it seems to be an unimportant detail, okay? Again, we're just like pointing out the problems. So anyway, she tells him that David expected that she wouldn't become pregnant, right? I'm not sure why he thought she would become pregnant, He didn't use any type of contraceptive, so he knew the possibility that she may become pregnant. But anyway, he was hoping she wouldn't, I guess.
No, she wouldn't.
What?
He was hoping she wouldn't.
She wouldn't, I guess. But then she sent a message, I'm pregnant, and now David's got a problem, right? Because it's going to become a scandal. Why? Because her husband's out of battle. She became pregnant. Well, I don't know if it's public knowledge that David had relations with her, but there was more than one person knew. He sent someone to find out who she was. He sent people to bring her. So those people knew. So there's a limit to how secret you can keep things. If nobody knows anything, then nobody knows, right? If a few people know, but there's no need for them to spread, or there's no evidence they have to prove it, no one's going to believe them. But when this innocent young married girl, right, who everyone believes to be a tzedekis, right, suddenly becomes pregnant, right, then, and there's a few people who know the truth, then the newspapers are going to find out, becomes a big scandal, and the ramifications of this scandal could have been horrific, because David would probably have to be, the Sanhedrin would probably make him resign, he would feel he has to resign, there might be a civil war over his resignation. We've no idea what the consequence. It could be David all about it. It could be David was just selfish, didn't want to get a bad name, right? That could also be, right? But since we like David and we read his Tehillim and we don't want to look at David as such, we don't have to put David in bad light if we don't have to. We can make it good. David was worried about the consequences to the kingdom, the stability of the kingdom, if this scandal breaks the news. So he tried to cover it up. What does he do? He calls Uriah back from the front. He calls him, he schmoozes to him, he has a talk with him, how things going, right? He says, very nice, good, thank you for all the information about the army everyone's doing. Please go home to your wife. Right? And he very crudely hints to him that he should go home and have relations with his wife. Right? And now, it could be that got Uriah's mind suspicious. Like, why would David say, no, David's nice, big tzaddik, not going to tell me that. It's not his business, really. Right? He's the king. But, so that could be, he became a bit suspicious, but David, it was important that David should make this statement because David had to make sure he would go home and do this. Because if he comes home and just sits on the couch, watches TV, eating popcorn together, it's not going to be very good for his cover-up, right? He needs that this guy goes home, has relations with his wife, and then he comes home at the end of the war. Of course your wife's pregnant. No, it's not a big deal. It's not a question, and nobody has to know any better. Okay, so the kid will grow up not knowing who his real father is. It's not the end of the world. Unless you marry your sister, it's not really a big deal if you don't really know who your father is. But he thinks, he's his father, and really wasn't. What's the end of the world? Not the end of the world. Okay. So that's the plan, but Uriah, it looks like, although this is a bit, I invented this, it looked like that Uriah smelled a rat, as they say. It means Uriah was a bit suspicious and he didn't go home. He wouldn't go home. He slept in the barracks with the rest of David's soldiers who were in the royal guard, who were not out fighting, were in the palace. He slept with them. And when David says to him, why are you not going home? He says, me go? How can I go home? All my friends are out there at the front, suffering deprivation of sleeping in the trenches, and I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife, like you hinted, right? I can't do such a thing. So David tries many methods to get him to do it. He first of all, he says, look, he gives him to drink and to eat and go tomorrow. Nothing works. Uriah refuses to go home. He insists that he stays there. Okay? And so David has no choice. He gives him a letter. In this letter says to Yoav, please find a dangerous place to put Uriah in charge. Hoping that Uriah will get shot. Look, people die in battle, right? And Uriah will hopefully will get shot. That's the plan. So that really worked. Yoav went along with the plan, and they placed Uriah in a dangerous spot, and Uriah got killed, along with several others as well.
Right, but how does that make the suspicion go?
A good question. How will that help? So it looks like this. Oh, that looks nice. Yeah? No. Thank you. It looks like this. That David hasn't taken away the suspicion. He hasn't managed to cover it up. He won't manage to cover it up. But if Uriah gets killed, then David can marry Bathsheba immediately, right? And if he marries Bathsheba, then that will cover it up. That means the baby will be born. They'll have to presume the baby is being born prematurely, right? But the actual fact is a full term, understand? And they'll cover it up that way. Or they won't announce the birth until a few weeks later. They'll cover it up. That's David's plan, okay? That's this new plan. All right? First plan was she wouldn't be pregnant at all. That what can you do? She became pregnant. Second plan is that Uriah should come and sleep with her. That didn't work. Third plan is to have Uriah killed in battle. Look, people get killed in battle, right? And there's dangerous jobs that people have to do, so we have to pick some officer to do it. So it's convenient for my cover-up to pick Uriah, and he'll be the one, and he'll die in battle, right?
Well, the message is sent for him to pull back and get him killed anyway.
What?
In the message they sent to Yoav, it told Yoav to pull everyone back and leave Uriah there, so he
Yeah.
can slaughter.
But I think the point of that was not that Uriah would get killed, but that nobody else would get killed. That was the point. That means once you put in a dangerous position, right, and then doing this attack, but make sure that I don't want anyone else to get killed. So let's suppose at the specific moment, everyone will give instructions to retreat, and somehow or other, Uriah will still be there. And I mean, in the end, it wasn't necessary. It seems that in actual fact, there was more than one person killed from them. They were attacked. Okay, so now Uriah. So that's okay. I mean, it's okay, but that's the story. Okay, all right. That's the story so far. No, so we got a little bit further. Yoav sends back a messenger with a verbal message to tell David exactly what happened, that they were in a battle and there were certain casualties, including them was Uriah. That's it. And that's what happened. That's what we got up to yesterday. So far, with lots of questions on the story, we're not really attempted to answer them. The only one thing we gave an answer to was why does Uriah refuse to go back home? It doesn't say in the story. Our presumption is that he was suspicious, and that's why he didn't want to play along with David's cover-up. Right? The question on that is, why would Uriah be suspicious? That we have an answer. Like, just because David calls you home from the front and tells you to go home and sleep with your wife, it's a big jump, right? Taking the tzaddik, Yisrael, right? Who everyone sees as the biggest tzaddik in the generation. To assume, well, it must be that when I was away, he saw my wife bathing and he decided to sleep with her and she's pregnant. I was like, you never in a million years have thought of that. So why should it?
Slept with her.
Yeah, you come in the middle of the story, right? Yes, he slept with her and she became pregnant, and he's trying to cover it all up. Okay, so that's the question, right? Why? So we did answer one question, which is he refuses, and he's refusing orders, explicit orders from the king, right? Like that's serious insubordination. And then the king sends a present with it, and he rejects the present. And then the king tells him to go again and again, and each time he says, "Me, I swear I won't go." Like he's swearing to disobey the king. Now, look, I understand him. He doesn't want to play along with the king's cover-up, right? This is his wife, and I'm going to cover up when you would touch my wife. I'm not going to cover up. On the other hand, I understand. I wouldn't have considered that insubordination, in front of a court martial. I'd say, yes, of course I didn't, because he slept with my wife, right? But you don't know that. right? And why would you on earth have made up such a story? Just one thing that David said out of place was, go home and wash your feet. That's what he said. Go home and wash your feet. Now, according to the text, it looks like wash your feet is a, what's the word? Euphemism, thank you. A euphemism for sleep with your wife. Because feet are related to reproduction, like urine is mei raglayim, feet water. So therefore because in Hebrew there's no words for the reproductive organs. There's no way to say them in Hebrew, right? You have to beat around the bush, right? Mm-hmm. Okay? So you talk about your thigh, people that come out of your thigh, right? What does that mean? That means your children, right? Well, they don't come out your thigh. Nothing comes out your thigh. But that's the way to say it, because it's the nearest part of the body to your reproductive, right? And a woman, there's no name for the reproductive. There's no name for the cervix or the you call it that place. That's what he said. That's there's no way to say it in Hebrew, right? Yeah, the womb is a rechem, right? The womb, but that's far inside where the baby actually develops, right? But the vagina, there's no word for it in Hebrew. That, according to Rambam, that's why it's called Lashon HaKodesh. Because there's no, that's the Rambam's opinion. There's other opinions, but that's the Rambam's opinion. Because it's holy, there's just no word to say it. Or to have sexual intercourse, there's no way to say that in Hebrew either. You can say biyah, but biyah just means to come. Right, there are ways to say it, but it isn't actually a word that describes it. Anyway, the point is that David sort of says the hint to it. That's the whole, he builds a whole mountain out of a molehill and says, oh, must be David's had sex with my wife. And therefore I'm not going to go plug. He's actually right. Yeah, but we don't know why he doesn't know. How does he know that he's right? To the extent that he's blatantly refusing, swearing to refuse to accept orders from the king.
God showed it.
Shocking, right? Okay, so the story is just one big question mark, but I want to finish the whole story, and then we'll add more questions, and hopefully we'll see Chazal, our rabbi's way of seeing the story, which puts the story in a much better light than he's usually seen. The truth is, a guy can do terrible Averas and still do tshuva, right? But even still, it's hard to believe that we're expected to read David's Tehillim when this is what he's being accused of. You know, this is a real bad state. And it actually gets worse. Halachically, it gets much worse. Anyway, here, take your book. Well, how is that? No, I mean the halachic ramifications of his actions. I don't mean he does more Averas.
Okay,
I got one more question.
This makes me feel pretty good, actually.
The intention of David to send him to a dangerous place or to get him killed, to cover up the story, does that qualify as murder?
Murder,
like from
possibly. You would have thought so. But and it's actually, if it really is murder, it's really worse than his adultery, because his adultery was done as an action of lust. As you have the Yetzer Hara. Yeah. So people do Averas, right? Unfortunately, we all do Averas when it comes to big Yetzer Haras. But after the story's finished, to sit down and think, what we're going to do about the husband now? Something about it. That's cold-blooded murder. That you can't say, I had a Yetzer Hara to kill him. No, you were embarrassed, and there's a scandal. Okay, but that's thought that. You had a lot of time to think of it. You don't have time to deal with the Yetzer Hara, right? That's why Yetzer Hara gets you, because you just do it quickly. Too late, right? But this is much worse in a sense, but we'll have to see. And have to realize, but in battle, people get killed. So if it wouldn't have been Uriah, it would be some other general. There's things we have to do. Just convenient. Is that bad? For the officer, we talked about it yesterday, right? Like, you're in the trenches, right? Yeah. And there's enemy fire, and some soldier has to be sacrificed in order to draw the area of fire, to know where the shot's coming from, right? So the officer in charge has to say, hey, stick your head out. And a good soldier will do that, right? You do what your officer tells you, right? Now, you could pick any soldier. So who are you going to pick? The one you don't like, right? Probably. Is that morally incorrect to pick the one you don't like?
Depends on your intention. If your
my intention is to get rid of him. I know one of them's going to die, right? But this guy is a pain in the neck. He's always asking for a raise, always asking for leave. There's lots of things. So why should I sacrifice the good guy when there's another guy to get rid of?
That's not what happened.
It is. No. They're fighting a battle against. They're fighting. But it doesn't make any. I'm just saying that as a marshal, right? I know if it's such a terrible thing, I don't think it's morally nice, but I don't know.
Choose him, so.
No, but he's trying to prevent a scandal over here. He's trying to prevent the stability of the country, right? I don't know what it is, right? He's not that he just wants to marry her. No, he actually stayed with her and wanted to go back. And he's trying to cover up this event to prevent this scandal and the consequence of this tremendous Chilul Hashem. The guy who God picked through the prophet Shmuel to be the leader of the Jewish people, and he can't control his Yetzer Hara with a married woman. Can you imagine if that would happen to one of your tzaddikim, right? Yeah, one of our tzaddikim, Klal Yisrael, Reb Chaim. Yeah,
It happened.
whatever. So what does it do? It creates tremendous scandal, right? And people then won't have nothing to do with this person. They'd be right to have nothing to do with this person. So the guy does proper tshuva, and even then, they'll never get covered. It just doesn't
How are we
work.
meant to look at this?
What?
How are we meant to look at this?
Rega, you haven't started. This pleasure. Come every day and come for it. How you doing?
Good.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
So the story is that David. So I don't know that you have to be so negative about how, if he'd done something more dangerous than the army required. Okay, that would be murder. At least second-degree murder. He didn't murder himself. He put him in the front. Somebody else killed him. He wouldn't be killed by Beis for it. But that would be shocking. That we should read Tehillim from someone like that. You know, like a thug, the head of the mafia, right? He never murders anybody. He just gets the thugs to do it, and so technically that's not murder, but it's certainly not tzaddik. I said my Rebbe said, let David be right. Why should I read his Tehillim? Let him be right, my Tehillim. I mean, that's who we're dealing with. So at the moment, David's in a very bad light, and we can get it over there. Don't worry, slowly. So let's just finish the battle, because there's a battle going on with Ammon at the same time. There's two stories going on. So what page are you up to, Dylan?
23.
23. So it's towards the end of
Kaf
chapter Yud Aleph. Also, let me just put on my recorder.
At the Samik Kafche.
Samach. Ah, great. That's towards the end of the chapter. A few more psukim. Come on. Music. There we go. Okay. Pasuk Chafei. Vayomer David, and you can write it if you want, and that's what the spaces are for. So David has just received a message from Yoav that there was a certain campaign that they were not so successful in, and some of the soldiers got killed, including Uriah, unfortunately. Vayomer David el HaMelech. David said to the messenger. The word malach doesn't mean an angel here, although it usually does. Here it means a messenger. Sometimes means that. Why you use that word, I don't know. I'm sure there's a deep reason why sometimes you use the word shliach, sometimes you use malach. It would sound like, a messenger who's a big tzaddik. You might use the word malach, but I don't know who this messenger was. I don't know why he should be called a big tzaddik. Anyway, I'm just pointing out. Koisemar el Yoav. No, Uri wasn't the message. He was the one who brought the message in the first place. Koisemar, so you shall. David is sending a message back to Yoav. So you shall say to Yoav, Al Yeira be'einecha. So Dylan, tell us what's the word Yeira.
Fear? Or is it shepherd?
Why is it not fearing? It's not fearing because that's an iron, right?
Yeah.
Good. So what would it be instead?
Shepherd.
Shepherd. But it doesn't make any sense. Al Yeira be'einecha. Do not shepherd in your eyes. No. The more simple meaning of the word Reish Ayin is Ra, meaning evil, right? We don't have to look for the convoluted one, meaning shepherd, when it can just be simple. Hey Ra, don't let it be bad. Let it not be bad in your eyes. Es hadavar hazeh, this thing. Don't take it so seriously. David's playing poker here, you understand? David is the one who sent this guy to the front to die. Yoav's coming, sending him back. They both know that this was planned, but the messenger mustn't twig up. Understand? Because then the messenger will go straight to the newspaper and tell them David murdered Uriah by putting him at the front. We don't want that to get out either. Only got out because the Navi wrote this book. Otherwise, no one would have known. Okay, no one at the time knew. The guys die in battle. So David has to give a message back to Yoav through the messenger, playing along with the whole game.
Politics.
Right, exactly. So David says to the messenger, tell Yoav not to feel bad about, don't take so to heart, that you lost the battle, it happens, right? Al Yeira be'einecha, so let this thing not be bad in your eyes. Ki kazoi v'kazeh, like this and like this, tochal hacherev, the sword consumes. Cherev is a sword. Tochal means from the word to eat, but swords don't eat, right? In English we say consume. It means this is what happens in battle. People get killed. That's what it's saying. That's what happens. So it's part of our casualties. We knew when we were going out to fight that not everybody would come back. And this is, unfortunately, just what happens when you do war. Hachazek, on the contrary, be strong. Milchamtecha, you're fighting, your war. Be courage, don't lose heart because a few people died. Be strong. El Ha'ir, against the city. The Harsa, and destroy it. V'chazkehu, and strengthen him. I think it means, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who the he is. Yes, it can't be the city, because the city can't mean strength on the city, because the feminine is feminine. A city is a feminine word. In Hebrew, all words are either masculine or feminine, like in French, right? Not like in English, everything's it. No, so if a city was a feminine, so we would say v'chazka. Chazkehu means strengthen him, means strengthen Yoav. When you go back, this is my message to him, and you, the messenger, should strengthen Yoav as well. Be strong, and David gives you a big hug, right, from David, and be strong. Don't lose heart just because Uriah died. Wink, wink. You know and I know that we planned this, but the messenger doesn't have to know. Right? This is trying to keep this whole story a secret. So we have to act normally, how we would act if it was unfortunate this guy died. Okay. Now we have an interesting passage. Vatishma Aish Uriah, and the wife of Uriah heard. What's her name?
Bathsheba.
Bathsheba. It doesn't tell you her name here. The point is that she's Uriah's wife. Kimeis Uriah Isha. The Uriah died. What does Isha mean?
His wife. Shaha.
Isha
Is her husband.
her husband. Right? Ish is a man with a yud. Right? Whenever it means a woman, it's without a yud. Isha without a yud is a woman. Ish is a man with a dot in the hay. It means her husband. So she heard that Uriah, her husband, had died. The wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, died. But he spied, and she eulogized.
What does eulogize?
Eulogize means that you've got to have a hesped. When a great person dies, so we make a public gathering and someone speaks to them, right? Okay, that's called a hesped. Okay? But he spied al ba'ala, and she mourned, I suppose it means. I mean, if she made a public eulogy, I don't know, that's what it usually means, but something like that. She took this death very seriously. Yeah? So I want to point out to you, well, I'm not going to answer it yet, but there are two words for husband in the same pasuk.
Isha and
Ish and Ba'ala, right. Isha, her husband. Ba'ala, her husband. So you want to know, why did the author change the words in the middle of the pasuk? You hear that? We even say, Aish eschayim yimtza, Ba'ala, right? It doesn't say Batach Lev Isha. Right, could have done, right? Isha, her husband. Ba'ala, her husband. What's the difference?
Baal is an owner.
Oh, so Baal means an owner, correct? That's what it usually means in the context, or Baal Habayis, the owner of the house, right? Baal Hasadeh. So the Baal is the owner of the woman. Isha means her man. So it's describing different relationships in a marriage. One is her man, one is her owner.
It feels like the first one, the Isha, is like the personal relationship that you have human to human, and the Ba'ala is more the formal concept.
Okay, all right. Okay, but that doesn't answer why the apostle changes. It just answers what is the nuance, right? But we'll deal with that. Or when we have an explanation to answer the whole thing, will be part of the answer. Okay, I'm just pointing out. Vaya'avor ha'evel, and the mourning period passed. Avel is mourning. La'avor means to pass. So the mourning period presumably is a week. Right? It could be 30 days, right? It's not going to be a year, because a year is only for a child, right? A year is only for a parent, right? You mourn for a year for a parent, for other relatives it's only for 30 days, right? So, could be that it means 30 days, okay? Let's say, Yishlach David, and David sent, Vayasfa, and he brought her in, El Beisai, to his house. That he loyla Isha, and she became to him as a wife. Whoa. So, eventually David marries her. It wasn't his plan originally. On the contrary, he had sexual relations with her, and then she went home, and then, I'm pregnant, what are we going to do now? He didn't want to marry her then. He didn't bump her husband off. He wanted to cover it up. But that didn't work. So then he said, well, the second best cover up is, if he's killed, and I marry you, then no one has to know. Because you'll have a baby, they'll think it's my baby, why does anyone have to know? Was he successful? Well, unfortunately the story got out in the press called Shmuel based, right? So we know the story, right? At the time, was it successful? I don't think there's any way of knowing. We don't have the newspapers at the time. We don't have any contemporary books that would describe people's reaction. All we have is, we know the truth because the Navi knows the story. Right? We don't know if he got out.
But surely there would have been some form of oral being passed down. Everything
Yes,
else-
no, I wanted to do it. Yes, there's lots of oral tradition. We have that in the Gemara, lots of oral tradition. But my question is you want to know? That's what I'm asking. Is part of oral tradition people's reaction? Did people find out? Was David, to me, it looks like clear that David's trying to cover this story up with good intentions. I don't say cover up for his own advantage. No, I'm not suggesting. I'm not putting it in a bad light. You could read it like that. He wants to keep the stability of the country, which is very, very important. You know, anarchy is horrific. The consequences of civil war and anarchy. It could be hundreds of thousands of deaths if you don't keep this quiet. So he's not trying to do it for selfish reasons, right? Let's put him in a good light. Fine, no problem. But my question is, was he successful? Was he successful in covering it up? There's no way of knowing. It doesn't say. I mean, yes, there's a Chazal who say like this. There's a Gemara in Shabbos, I'll tell you, it's a beautiful Gemara. Gemara says that people used to walk into the Beis HaMedrash, where David was learning. David would walk and learn to learn, Chavrusa, whatever, and say, David, what happens to a guy who commits adultery? This is what used to tease him. You hear this? People say to David, what happens to a guy who commits adultery?
This happened like this?
I wasn't there. You understand? I don't know newspaper. This is what the Gemara in Shabbos describes the way people used to tease David HaMelech.
So they know.
So I'm proving it from this story that Chazal have a tradition that other people found out. Right? Even if people didn't have this book to read. Right?
How did they find out?
As I said, there were people who knew. Like I said, there were people who put two and two together. You understand? There's guys who originally were sent to find out who this woman is. They knew. David hadn't had them shot. No, they were people, right? They were probably David swore them to secret, but you know how things get out, right? And then there were people who were sent to bring her. Now, you can't bring a person into the palace and nobody know, you know, unless it's some secret passage into David HaMelech's bedroom. No, there's people in the palace, there's guards who were sworn to secret. No, don't see anything, you know, that's just how it is, right? But they know, right? And when people know, you can't keep a secret, right? You tell it, you're in the mikveh, that's what mikveh news is, right? You pass on things down. So it's not unbelievable that people find, and then he marries her. Oh, very suspicious. Her husband's just been, by mistake, at the front, and then a month later, she's crying her eyes out, the husband's dead, right? And then a month later, David marries her, and then 6 months later she has a baby. It doesn't look like a little baby to me. Fully formed, big chop, 3.5 kilo baby. How did she manage a baby in 6 months so quickly? It's really 9 months. Was you know, people are not stupid, right? So that's my question. Was David successful? It would look like that David's trying to cover it.
The kid was the kid.
We'll talk about the kid very soon. Yeah, we'll see. Lad, that slowly. We'll get to the whole story, right? Don't jump the gun, right? But that question, if he was successful, then maybe it's good. But if he wasn't successful, right, then in a way, it's an even bigger scandal. Because when you try to cover up a scandal, you make it even bigger, Chilul Hashem. Let him come out with the truth. Why didn't he tell the nation? He should have gone out on CNN, right, and admitted, like, what's his name, Nixon, right? You go out and tell everyone, and then you resign, and everyone's proud of you, right? When you start trying to hide it, that gives you a worse name. So I think David faced a tremendous dilemma. If I try to hide it, and I'm successful, Baruch Hashem. But if I try to hide it and I'm not successful and the message gets out, then you create even bigger Chilul Hashem. Right. Now, what do you do? This is David's dilemma. What should I do? Should I go along with this? Should I? I could, give Hashem a check every month in the post, and you'll look after your kid, and I'll pay, and no one has to know. And everyone will want to know where the baby came from. You don't have to tell everyone. No one will know. That's one thing. That's one way to keep it secret. It might not be successful either. Bringing it into your palace may be better at keeping it secret. It may be worse, right?
Yeah.
If it's worse, it's terribly worse. And if it's better, okay, fine. So you don't know what to do. So what do you do?
Wait, so which one is better?
I don't know. We don't have enough information to know. I have two scenarios. Each one is going to has the possibility of creating a Chilul Hashem. If she becomes pregnant, if she has a baby, right? That looks just like, is blonde, right? Redhead, just like David, right? And very similar, and that could create a Chilul Hashem, right? So one way to prevent that is to bring her in the palace, and that way, no one has to know.
Or
Just
say
one second. That's one way to do it, right? That runs the risk of people finding out that it really happened, and you try to cover, which is a bigger Chilul Hashem. Or you could tell the truth, and that could also create a Chilul Hashem. right? Oh, David HaMelech, big tzaddik, the Navi Hashem makes you into a melech, and this is what you do. So why you got complaints when we behave like that? Well, we just copying you, and it's awful, right? What can come out of this? You could say, no, he'll show he's a man, and he's true, and have a Yetzer Hara. You could make a big, beautiful speech of it, and you all have Yetzer Haras, and still you have to do tshuva like I'm going to do. You could, all of these are different possibilities, right? The question is, what do you do when you're faced with this situation? Now, we know what David did. Was that the right path? I don't know. It means what David did, and I would like to suggest that all those three paths that David could have done, he could have come out to the nation, he could have done nothing and just let her give birth, or he could take her into his family. Any one of those paths run the risk of making tremendous negative consequences. The one he picked, David HaMelech, forgive me, the one he picked was the one that suited him the best. Now, I mean, after a lot of thought about that, I don't just mean, like we do, oh yeah, let's do that. No, I mean, after a lot of thought, but the actual deep down, the thing that pushed him to make that decision, opposed to the other two decisions, was this suited him much better, because then he'd be married to this gorgeous girl. You understand? Now that's what we call sheikhad. It's a bribery in making a decision. When you make decisions on your own without going to rabbinical advice, I'm not suggesting there's anyone David could have gone to for this advice, right? Maybe he could have gone to the Navi. He said, Navi, this is how money you know what I've done, right? You're the Navi, you know. So what do you think is the best plan? Should I do A, B, or C? And then I said, well, God thinks the best plan is to do A or B, but you did C, right? So it looks like he didn't go to ask anyone advice, right? And he picked a plan which suited him best. I'm not saying he was conscious of that decision. Usually when we make mistakes, we're not conscious that we're making something which we have an agenda. It's a very subconscious thing. But that's why we make mistakes.
But David was a Navi as well, right? So
No. Navim don't know everything. You understand? Yes, Navim know when God wants them to know. God didn't want David to know. David wanted David to make the right decision. You know, you slipped up once, which was you had relations with this woman. That was when you slipped up. Serious, right? You then bumped her husband off. Okay, but that was a mistake. Now, what are you going to do now? Each time you have to pass the test. Now you've got a test in front of you. There's three things you can do. Now, it looks like he made the wrong decision, because look what he does. Isha, she became his wife. Then she gave birth to a child, which was 6 months later. And the matter that David had done was evil in the eyes of God. Now, what was evil? Now, when you say something was evil in the eyes of Hashem, it sounds like it wasn't obvious. You know, what's he got? I'm trying to think, the guy in Chicago, the head of the mafia, what's his name? Al Capone, right? So he murdered this kid, and it was evil in the eyes of God. He was an evil person, right? You know, evil in the eyes of God means it wasn't so obvious that what he was doing was a terrible aveira. Maybe he himself didn't consider this an aveira. Right. Now, if this is referring to the fact he had relations with a married woman, that's hard to believe. Well, it was evil in the eyes of Hashem. Anybody who would have known about it could be nobody else knew about it. It was the evil in the eyes of David as well. So how could I do this? I'm an idiot. I got so stupid. That was so bad and evil. Okay, I understand how he ate Sahara, but it wasn't just evil in the eyes of Hashem. He bumped his husband off, right? Put in the front line. And if that's held against him, you'd think that was second-degree murder. You don't have to go, the guy kills a kid in a car crash. Like, it was evil in the eyes of Hashem. It was evil. To me, it looks like it's the final decision, which was one of those three possibilities that he could have done, and he picked the wrong one. God, that was a bad mistake, David. Because you did, and the reason why it's held against him is because he had his negias, means he had his agenda here. Who wouldn't want to marry this girl? No, God, I don't want to do that reason. I'm doing it because I'm trying to prevent civil war. Come on, Behemet. Why couldn't we pick one of the other two possible ways of preventing civil war? Well, because they're not as effective. This is the most effective way. Really? Is that the real reason? So you and I wouldn't know. David himself didn't even know what was so bad about this. I'm really honestly doing this L'Shem Shamayim. I'm doing this to save the Jewish people. Right? God said, I know the real reason. Right? And that's why in the eyes of God, this was bad. And at this point, God sends the prophet. Up to now, God didn't send any prophets. So it could be God at the end of the story. God wants the whole story to play out. David's already been tested 3 times. The first one, sleeping with her. The second one was killing her husband. And the third one is marrying her at the end of the story. To me, it looks like what's really being held against him is the last point, and not the other two. But we really have to explain. Right? The first one is easier to understand because it's terrible Aveira. It's much worse than the last thing, as Aveiras count. But that's done with the Yetzer Hara. Right? The second one is not really murder because somebody has to die in battle. It might be the one that's most convenient for you to die, right? But the third one is your self-interests. That's not called Yetzer Hara. It's not the fire and the burning Yetzer Hara. Your self-interest to marry this gorgeous girl makes you miscalculate in something which the kings have to do. You understand? Kings have to plan everything, work everything out, see what's going to be most effective, and your own vested interest in the story pushed you to make the wrong decision.
He should have been selfless in his calculations.
Right. It's very difficult. I mean, I don't blame David for it, but God does.
And
Right?
so what
What does God do?
No, what should he have done then?
I don't know, maybe he should have gone on CNN and told the nation, listen, this is terrible, it's awful, I understand, you may want to throw me out because of this, but I really regret doing it, I'll never do it again, I'm going to start writing Tehillim, and you should all understand that even when you do Averas, I don't know, he could have made it into a positive thing, right? Or he could have done nothing. He could have ignored, let her live at home, her husband's died, and she'll remarry somebody else, and they'll bring up the kid, and that'll be the end of the story. I don't know which would have been better, but if God decides that David made the wrong decision, then David, that means that God expects that had David had been less involved, he wouldn't be able to come to the right decision.
But it sounds like it was only at the end when, right?
Correct. And that's why it's only at this point that God says he's angry
So
with him.
what could it be done?
At this point?
better? Yeah.
At this point, there's two other things he could have done. He could have not married her.
And you just had a mystery baby.
Okay, which doesn't do with him. Why does anyone have to? Well, there's no reason why the world would know it was him. Once you start bringing her into your house and marrying her a month after her husband died, that's a bit suspicious, right? It's true it's a better cover-up because nobody has to know anything, right? It's your baby from afterwards. On the other hand, it's more likely to be suspicious. You understand? It's very delicate, this thing. But I think that you and I find it difficult to judge delicate situations, but God knows whether you're able to judge it or not. And that's why God says, David, I know that if you'd been less involved in the decision, in the agenda of marrying this woman, you'd have made the right decision. So how God does it? God does it as follows. God lets you judge a situation on your own, but being impartial, not being involved. This is what he does. Vayishlach Hashem es Nasan. So God sent Nasan, who was a prophet, Natan, a Navi, El David. Vayava Elov. And he comes to him, he makes up a whole story. Tells him a story. I'm telling you from the beginning this is made up. It's not a real story. But he doesn't tell David it's a real story. He tells David, I've got this story. I'd like to ask you a question. Halachic question. You're the king. Usually halachic questions you go to the rabbi. You go to the Sanhedrin. As a king, you have the right to judge this on its merits. More than rabbis and the Sanhedrin generally judge things on evidence. On very clear guidelines what is the punishment for any given crime. The king has the authority to judge based on the evilness of the crime. Okay? Good?
Yes.
And that's why he's coming to the king. I want to say, what do you think that this guy deserves? So let's see what the crime was. And he says to him, Shnei Anoshim, two men, Hayu be'irachas, lived in the same town. Two men lived in the same town. Echad Ashir, ve'echad Rosh. Now the word Rosh does not mean head. That's Rosh. Rosh means poor. It's usually spelt without an aleph. Here it has an aleph, but it's usually spelt without an aleph. Okay, I don't know why. I mean, I suppose it's trying to hint to the word head, right? But as a head, it would be Rosh. As Rosh, with a comma, it means poor. So there's two guys in town, one rich and one poor. La'ashir, to the poor man. Hayatzain, he had sheep. Ubakar, and cattle. Harbe, many. Ma'od, a lot. The rich guy's got lots and lots of sheep and cattle. V'lo Rosh, he is spelled without an aleph, okay? V'lo Rosh, and the poor guy, Ein Kol. He's nothing. No sheep, no cattle. Ki im kivsa achas ketana. Ki im means except. Kivsa is a sheep, female sheep. Kivsa, kevis would have been male sheep. What? Achas, one little female sheep. That's all he's got. Ashekana.
What's that? Sheep?
Sheep is kivsa, or keves. Keves is a sheep, kivsa is a female sheep. How do you say baby sheep? A lamb. How do you say baby female lamb? Don't know. Is there a way to say that?
A lamb.
In English?
In English, is there a way to say it? There's no way to say it.
A lamba.
Lamba? Okay. A lamb, this is a female sheep. Kitana, little. A shekana that he bought, he paid for it, you understand? He wasn't, he inherited it, he worked for it, he bought with his own money, this poor guy, he bought this one sheep, that's all he owns. Vayechayeha, and he brought it to life. Means he probably bought it a very cheap, scraggly little thing, and he fed it, and he made it fat, and vatigdal imoy, and it grew up, gadol, she, meaning the baby lamb, with him, v'im banav, and when his children, or his sons, yachdav, it was part of the family, right? This is how, it's like a child to him. Mi pito tochal. She, meaning the sheep, would eat from his bread. Pat is bread. I don't know why there's two words in Hebrew, lechem and pat. They both mean bread. Pas lechem. Maybe it means a loaf of bread.
Pita.
Yeah, maybe.
Pita.
Pas lechem. Okay? So, she would eat from his bread, umikosot tishteh, and she would drink from his cup. That's how close this sheep farmer, he's not a sheep farmer, is he? He's just a poor guy with one sheep. It was like, ubechekot tishkav, she would sleep in his lap. Chek is the lap. Tishkav, she would sleep. Vatihi lo kebat, and she was to him like a daughter. His only daughter, because he's got sons, right? His only daughter. Cute. Vaviyovai helech. Now, helech from the word to go. A goer, a traveller, came. Laish, ha'isha, to the rich man. He knocks on the door, says, "Can I come in?" "Yeah, no problem." "So I'll offer you something to eat." Yachmal, but he had pity. Lakachas mitzoinoi, to take from his sheep. Umibkaroi, and from his cattle. La'asois la'oreach, to do for the guest. Habaloi, that came. Chaval, as they say in modern Hebrew. Chaval, right? What a waste. Look, he's not such an important guest. He's just a traveller, right? Pity to get one on my own. So what did he do instead? Vayikach, and he took Ev Kifsas Aish Harosh. He's got his aleph back. I don't know why this aleph keeps disappearing. And he took from the sheep, from the lamb of the poor man. What? Stole it from his neighbor. Don't cry. It's not a true story. It's just a moshe. Right? Didn't actually happen. Right? And he took his neighbor's one little sheep. What did he do it? And he killed it. He shechted it. And he made it. It doesn't say shech, that's what it means. He made it, means he cooked it. La'ish, to the man, Habai love, who came to him. Shocking.
What? So he has to pay 4 times now.
Oh, so that Dylan, as a rabbi, would say you have to pay 4 sheep. That's halacha. But David wasn't a rabbi. I mean, he was a rabbi.
David's about to judge himself.
Exactly. David's the king. And the king is allowed to judge a crime on its merits, not just on its technical violation. Technically, this guy violated theft of a sheep and he slaughtered it, which the Torah's maximum punishment is 4 times. But David is allowed to judge things for 5 if it's a cow, if it's a cow or a sheep. Yeah? David's allowed to judge something on its evilness. This is evil. This is really, this isn't just theft. You've taken the guy's one sheep. It's like murdering his daughter. That's how he feels. And you're a rich guy. You've got everything in the world. Like, this is really evil and cruel. And that's, you see from this, the king thinks this is a real story. Right? So what does he say? Yichar af David ba'ish ma'od. And David's anger burnt exceedingly against this man. Yichar af, like we say in the Shema, v'chara af Hashem. God's anger will burn. Af is anger, chara is to burn, ma'od is exceedingly. David's anger burnt. Ba'ish means against the man. The base here means against the man. Ayoimel Nasan, and he says to Nasan, Chai Hashem, as the Lord lives, I swear by God, Ki ben moves ha'isha oisezos. The guy who did this deserves to die. Whoa. And as he shall say correctly, David has just sealed his own fate. Some even say that you shouldn't do this. That means that if you see somebody do something, I just did a Shiur, if you see somebody do something, you say, wow, it's such a terrible idea. This guy deserves X, Y, Z. It could be that the reason why God showed you this Aveira is because you've done something very similar.
Wow.
Right? And God says, no, I'm not going to decide his fate. Let him decide his own fate. Let's see how he judges other people when they do that. Himself, he always finds an excuse for it. Right? And other people, he judges them like that. Right? Which is really the thing over here. David did as it's clear, David's done something very, very similar. Right? As the novel will explain. Right? right, in a second. And then David doesn't seem, what's the big deal? So, what? Doing anything else would have been just as bad. I had to do something. Well, this is what I decided to do, right? So he said, I'm not going to decide what he deserves. Let David decide himself what he deserves. So he sent the Navi to make up a whole story and let David decide how bad it is, how cruel it is. Yes, so technically Dylan's right. If you go to court, he wouldn't kill you for it. But David's not court. David's the king. The king has a right to judge it based on its cruelty. And that's what you deserve. And what really means that even if Basin don't give this to you, God will give this to you. If that's how cruel it is, God isn't limited by the punishments of the Torah. You stole, you raped a young girl and ruined her life, right? So what will Basin do? They won't kill you, even though you may think she deserves that. That's not Basin's job. Basin has certain limitations of what they're entitled to do, right? But God might do that because God thinks it's really nasty and cruel and evil, and therefore God, yes.
Did David really not know that the story was referring to him? It's pretty obvious. And
No, it's only obvious to you because you've read the story. David sees himself as completely innocent. He hasn't done anything wrong here. It says this was evil in the eyes of Hashem, means David doesn't know what he's done wrong. David doesn't see what he's done as evil. Now, I explained to you, right?
I know, but
One second. The truth is, that's a good point. He should have still twigged on. You're stupid. Like 2 weeks ago, he had a relationship with this married woman, right? So you should have said, that's the story. That's right. Okay, but you're right. But we haven't finished the story. Okay, well, except that's a good question. And add that to the list of questions. Okay, we'll answer that all in good time. All right. So he says, Ben Maves, I swear to God, this guy deserves to die. Vesakivsa, in addition, that doesn't excuse him from paying. Vesakivsa on the sheep, Yishalem Arba time, he has to pay 4. Right? So you're right, David at that point. That doesn't let him off. Right? He deserves to die, and he's got to pay 4 times for the sheep. Kivsa, that's the sheep.
Oh, right.
Right? Yishalem, he shall pay Arba time, 4 times the amount. Arba is 4, Arba time 4 times. Eikev means since, or because. Asher Asa, because he did this thing, because he did this terrible crime, because he had no pity on the crime that he's being killed for is not the stealing. That's why he's paying 4 times. It's the terrible corruption of character which this rich guy can have such a ruined soul that he can think of taking this one poor little sheep from this poor guy. New section. Nasan el David. Ata Aish. You are the man. Whoa. That's below the belt, right? That's why there's a samach. You see, there's a samach in the middle of the possible. Samach is usually a break. Paragraph. Usually you don't take breaks, paragraphs in the middle of a sentence. I mean, Nasan wants those words to settle in. So Nasan's quiet. I don't know how I'm for. Right? That's what it looks like. That's what's a break. You realize, David, that's you now. Think about it. Once you don't really have to explain much more than that. And once you get the guy to shift his perspective, wow, you're right. That was really bad what I did, and everything will start falling into place. Right? You just need someone to shake you out of the way you're looking at everything. You take your pink glasses off, and then the world's not pink anymore, right? So that's what that's you, David. Kayam Hashem, so says the Lord, Elikei Yisrael, God of Israel. Anoichi meshachticha, I anointed you lemelech as Israel, as king of Israel. V'anoichi tzalticha miad Shaul, and I saved you from the hand of Shaul many, many, many times. I anointed you as king. I saved you from Shaul. It actually was after that, right? He was anointed king before he was saved from Shaul. V'etni lecha es beis Adonaicha, and I gave you the house of your master. Means I then gave you the palace. I gave you his family. The esneshei Adonecha, and the women of your master, becheikecha, are in your lap. Now, what that means? It doesn't mean that David married Shaul's ex-wives, but it probably means that David married his daughter. Yeah. Right? David was married to Shaul's daughter. Right? Ve'etne lecha es basis. I gave you the whole of Israel. The Yehuda and the tribe of Yehuda, all of Israel are now your subjects. The imma'at, and if that's a little. That means if the number of wives you have is little. And I will add to you kahena like this, the kahena, and like this. What does that mean? Chazal say this is a 620. If Dylan reminds me. It's Monday. Yeah. That means like this. Chazal learned from here a very interesting idea. That king is allowed to have 18 wives.
18.
18. It's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. The Torah says a king, Torah in Sefer Devarim, a king may not have lots of wives. But it doesn't say the definition of lots. In the written Torah, there's no definition of what's called a lot. To me, one's enough. Two's for sure lots, right? But Chazal say, if you see from here, the truth is a non-king has got no limits. You can have as many wives as you want. As long as you can afford to spend enough time and money on all of them, there's no limit. You can have a million wives if you want. There's no Allah.
We can have.
Ashkenazim have a custom not to take more than one. Okay.
But it's like perfectly halachically fine.
There's no real problem with having David HaMelech. Yeah, many people have more than one time. It's not approved of. It's not a good idea. It's not very good for Shalom Bayis. No, it's not good for lots of things. Right? What?
Shalom Bati.
Yeah, it's not a good idea, right? But we don't do it anymore. Right? Sephardim write it in the Ksuva that he promises her never take another wife without her permission. That's what Sephardim write in the Ksuva. Ashkenazim don't need to write that because there's a ban on Ashkenazim having more than one wife. But
I heard that expired.
Yeah, someone had an interest in carrying somebody else.
Yeah, because it's like more than 1,000 years, right?
Calculation is that this past year expired or something.
Oh yeah. Anyway, it's not going to solve any problems. No, it's just going to create more problems.
Way too many women who don't.
It's going to make more problems.
I'll take all the ones that don't get picked.
But the first one won't agree.
Yeah.
The first one throw you out the house when you bring the second one in. I'm telling you.
I'll be rich. I'll have many houses.
Oh yeah. So what were we saying? But only a king has a limit. Because a king is so influential, it's so important the king acts right, we don't want all his wives pulling him in different directions. So how do you know the limits? So I learned from here. David had 6 wives. We know that. It was mentioned before and a few chapters ago, a list of his 6 wives. Okay? And the Navi says, if that's few, then I will add to you like this and like this. So that means if 6 is not enough for you, you could have had another 6 and another 6 was altogether 18. 18 you could have had. And what did you do instead? You took this, right, as he continues. Madua bazisa. So why did you despise as Devar Hashem, the word of God? La'asais hara be'einai, to do evil in my eyes. That means as if God speaking, not the Navi's eyes, right? He's saying the name of God. What did he do? You despise the word of God. Es Uriah achiti hikisa bacherev. You struck Uriah the Hittite by the sword. Now that's interesting. Was that the first thing he did?
No.
What was the first thing he did bad?
Right.
Then he says, and his wife he took as a wife. But that was the end of the story.
It's not counting.
It's not the beginning of the story. The beginning, sleeping with her, which to me is horrifically much, much more serious. Because she was a married woman at the beginning of the story. She was a widow at the end of the story. So it's not nice. It's a bit not so ethical what he did at the end of the story. But I would have thought, in a technical sense, what he did at the beginning is much worse. And it's not even mentioned here. God doesn't make a mention of it. You killed her husband. You then took her as a wife. And then it says, again, and him you killed with the sword of the Ammonites. We just said he killed him. Why say it twice?
That's maybe
the first thing was like killing the husband.
What, sleeping with her?
It must be.
Well, even if you say that, it's still in the wrong order. Because he killed him. He killed him before he took her as a wife.
He slept with her, which killed him. Then
that's what he's saying. Yeah, but then you took his wife. That was at the end of the story, and you killed him by the Bnei Ammon. Chazal say that the reason why it's repeated in the end is to say the fact that you killed him is not what's being held against you. That's why it says, although you killed him, but you killed him with the sword of Ammon, which means you didn't actually murder him. So although it wasn't nice, although it's not a big tick on your CV, that's not really what bothers me, says God. That's like a bad point. What really bothers me is you took his wife at the end of the story. And that's what's so shocking in this story. It looks like of the 3 things that are really held against him, it's not that he slept with her. And that could be because that's lust. What can you do? That's taiva, right? It's not that he was killed because it was a battle. People get killed in battle, right? It's that in the end, he took this widow. Well, so what? She was a widow. Why is that an Aveira?
Yeah,
One of the
that's-
three options. One
I
of the
know.
three-
Exactly. And that's what the Navi said, that's what God's got against you. Because if you would have thought about it properly, you would have realized it's a bad choice. Because the way I see it is that's the one most likely to get you caught. You think that's the best way to cover it up, right? But in the truth, it's the one that's most likely to get you caught, because that's what people are going to start speaking. You take her into your house, 6 months later she has a baby.
Wait, but I don't understand very.
You understand?
Basically.
And because that was the one that's most likely to get caught, that's why that should have. And if you get caught, if you're more likely to get caught, you're creating the Chilul Hashem. Well, Chilul Hashem is such an awful crime. You know what it says in Pirkei Avos? The Chilul Hashem is held against you even if it's a mistake. Even if you do a mistake, it says in the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, Echad Mezid, the Echad Shogeg, B'Chilul Hashem. So even if you make a mistake in your calculation, you create a Chilul Hashem, it's also held against you. I mean, unless there's no way you could have made a better calculation. But I mean, it's so serious, you have to think 1,000,000 times before you do something that can create a Chilul Hashem. And that what David should have done, I think, he should have gone to Nosson and HaNavi and said, what do you say about this? Look, I have a vested interest in this decision. It's not right for me to make this decision on my own. What do you say about it? Or go to Mephibosheth, or go to somebody, accept himself, and not make the decision on your own. Because Chilul Hashem is awful. I told you the story about the Chilul Hashem I once made. Right? I have to say, I wish you don't do the same thing ever. Right? I was in the airport. You must have heard the story, didn't I was in the airport. It was a long time ago. Before there was a thing in Israel called where you check out, automatic checkout. I'd never seen it in Israel. It could be it was ready there. I'd never seen it here. So I was in the airport Heathrow, and I saw someone using a automatic checkout, and I started to film it. So I could film it and take. I was there on my own. I wanted to show my kids here what an automatic checkout is, right? And somebody saw me doing this, and he suspected that I was trying to steal the guy's details on his credit card. Like, you know, 1,000,000 light years away from my brain to think I'm trying to steal. But that's what probably that guy would have wanted to do, such a thing, right? So when you see somebody doing something, you suspected that I was doing that. So he starts shouting across the duty free in the airport that I should stop doing it. I said, no, bro, I stopped doing it straight away. I never thought it would bother anybody. I suppose I should have asked the guy beforehand, because whenever you film other people, you're, you know, infringing on their privacy. So it's not the right thing to do, right? Then the guy says, "Oh, erase it," because I already had it filmed, understand? So I said, "Okay," and erase it, no problem. It's not like it's a big deal. But that's a Chilul Hashem. It was a mistake. Clearly, it was a mistake. I certainly did it on purpose. I didn't want to make that Chilul Hashem. I didn't think it would be a Chilul Hashem. But if like Chilul Hashem means like desecrating God's name. People say, "Oh, Jews there are thieves. They don't care about other people's feelings." Whatever. They get the negative vibes that I created by this story. Right now, maybe if I thought about it a bit more, I would have realized that it might. No, I never would have thought that someone suspect I'm going to steal his thing, because since I would never want to do such a thing, I would never think that someone would think that I was trying to do that. Right? But on the other hand, I could have thought about the fact it would bother someone that you're filming them without permission. People don't like to be filmed. It wasn't the guy who did it. It was somebody else who saw me. The guy had no idea, the guy who was filming. Somebody else saw me doing this. So Chilul Hashem is like, it's such an awful thing that people think bad about religion, about religious people, that even if it's a mistake, I don't mean it's a total mistake, but it's something you didn't plan, you really didn't think it would happen, but if you thought about it a bit more, I think that's what's the Navi's problem with David.
Wait.
If you thought about it a bit more, you would have come to the right decision. Or you would have decided that I can't decide on my own, and that's important. When you have an agenda, a vested interest in it, you can never make a true decision on your own, and you have to go ask someone who's not. And that's what David did. As soon as David saw this story, it was easy for him to decide, right, what this guy had deserved, because of the cruelty involved, and that's why David is now. So was he going to die? We'll see. Maybe yeah, maybe not. He's just passed sentence on himself. Well, he doesn't die because he gets to the end of the book, right? But we'll see.
One question though. Why does God write in this Torah that you should not kill? He writes it. You should not kill. You should not be judged of other wives. You should not commit that kind. You shouldn't take a married wife.
Yeah.
So he writes it in his Torah, those two things, and then David does it, but he doesn't.
Kill him.
Well, he doesn't.
How'd you know?
He doesn't judge it. He doesn't judge him for those two things.
Oh, that's good. You're adding that. That's another one of the questions. That's the question. Correct. That's exactly the point. It looks like the first thing is, look, you have to understand, when the simple answer to the question is, when God judges something, right? When God judges something, that means the law that you get killed for adultery is a law given to the Sanhedrin. When they have evidence, 2 witnesses who warned you, it's a horrific crime, and that's the rules. God judges based on the violence involved. So God knows that it was very difficult to overcome this temptation. You still could have, God's not going to give you a temptation, but it was very, very difficult. So the Sanhedrin don't take that into account. They say, look, you did this crime, you get killed for it. But God may be much more forgiving. He may be the opposite. He may be much more demanding. Like over here, a thief. The Sanhedrin will never obligate you to pay more than 4 times for a sheep. But God may be much more strict about it. If you do tshuva, right, that's the advantage of doing an aveira without witnesses. Because then you can always do tshuva and God will forgive you. Sanhedrin will say, I did tshuva. Sure you did tshuva. They'll still throw you off the roof. So, right, understand? Sanhedrin don't take tshuva as an excuse. No court can take tshuva. God takes tshuva as a real consideration. So, but David hasn't done tshuva yet. Right? It could be David will say you deserve to die with it for this. Could be. But David's just passed sentence on himself. We'll have to wait till tomorrow and see how the Navi passes judgment and how David reacts. They all live happily ever after in the end, but not so happily. There's another 4 or 5 chapters of horrific consequences of this sin of David.
Right.
Yeah, it goes on quite long.
And the baby that gets born from this is Shlomo, right?
No,
Ah.
absolutely not.
Baby is born as a bastard, right?
It depends how you define the word bastard. Bastard doesn't really mean anything in Hebrew law. He wasn't. Well, yes. The way you understand the story so far, he was a mamzer. Yeah, he wasn't really, because we don't really understand the story properly. But yes, that's would have been the simple way, because he was born from adultery.
But and kahena is like
this.
Is it connected to priest?
No, absolutely not. Nothing.
That's interesting.
Is there no way David could have been her girl, like by marrying her when she became a widow?
There was no way that he.
Could have gone girl, like a redeemer, by marrying her.
Whoa! What's this concept of redeeming?
It was a brother.
Well, once there's no redeeming.
I think it's something to do with someone who's married someone in your family, but.
No, that's something else. No, that's someone in your family.
Yeah.
This was somebody else's family.
So it's like.
What you're saying is exactly the opposite.
You can't. Yeah.
This is not only not a redeemer. This is forbidden to marry a woman you commit adultery with.
Right.
And that's the Gemara in Ksubas at length deals with this issue. Right? We haven't got to the end of the story yet. But that is one of the big problems with the story. How could David stay married to her? The Navi should have come and said, you are halachically forbidden to marry this woman because you committed adultery. But a woman who commits adultery is forbidden to her husband and to the man she commits adultery forever.
Wow.
And therefore, this woman should have been forbidden to David. And the problem is that they stay together and give birth to Shaul HaMelech later on. That's later on. So that's a big question mark on the whole story. How could God sanction this marriage to the extent that they stay married, they give birth to Shaul HaMelech, and he's the next king and builds God's temple when the whole marriage was illegitimate?
What?
It even says
that's why I said halachically becomes even worse, the story. That David is allowed to stay married to her.
But it works out.
It works out. That's the question. How? That's another big question on the story. But we'll have to leave that. We're over time already. Right? 10 minutes over time.